Chapters 1 and 2 of The Abysmal Brute. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Warren Caudy, Gurnee, Illinois. The Abysmal Brute by Jack London. Chapter 1. Sam Stubener ran through his mail carelessly and rapidly. As became a manager of prize fighters, he was accustomed to a various and bizarre correspondence. Every crank, sport, near sport, and reformer seemed to have ideas to impart to him, from dire threats against his life to milder threats, such as pushing in the front of his face, from irresponsible nobodies. He knew the whole run of the surprise portion of his mail. In his time, having received a razor strop made from the skin of a lynched Negro, and a finger, withered and sun-dried, cut from the body of a white man found in Death Valley, he was of the opinion that never again would the postman bring him anything that could startle him. But this morning he opened a letter that he read a second time, put away in his pocket, and took out for a third reading. It was postmarked from some unheard-of post office in Siskiyou County, and it ran, "Dear Sam, you don't know me, except my reputation. You come after my time, and I've been out of the game a long time. But take it from me, I ain't been asleep. I've followed the whole game, and I've followed you, from the time Cal Offman knocked you out to your last handling of Nat Nelson. And I take some of them coming. The niftiest thing in the line of managers that ever came down the plate. I got a proposition for you. I got the greatest rundown that ever happened. This ain't on. It's the straight goods. What do you think of a husky that tips the scales at 220 pounds weight? It's 22 years old. Twice as hard as my best ever. That's him, my boy, young Pat Glendon. That's the name Bill fight under. I've planned it all out. Now the best thing you can do is hit the first train and come up here. I bred him and I trained him. All that I ever had in my head, I've hammered into his. And maybe you won't believe it, but he's added to it. He's a born fighter. He's a wonder at time and distance. He just knows to the second and the inch, and he don't have to think about it at all. His 6-inch jolt is more the real sleep medicine than the full arm swing of most geezers. Talk about the hope of the white race. This is him. Come and take a peek. When you was managing Jeffries, you was crazy about hunting. Come along and I'll give you some real hunting. Will make your moving picture winnings look like 30 cents. I'll send young Pat out with you. That's why I'm all in and pass out any. So get the move on. I want you to. There's a fortune in it for both of you. I want to draw up the contract. Yours truly, Pat Glendon. Stubener was puzzled. It seemed, on the face of it, a joke. The men in a fighting game were notorious jokers, and he tried to discern the fine hand of Corbett or the big friendly paw of Fitzsimmons in the screed before him. But if it were genuine, he knew it was worth looking into. Pat Glendon was before his time, though, as a cub, He had once seen old Pat spar at the benefit for Jack Dempsey. Even then he was called Old Pat, and had been out of the ring for years. He had antedated Sullivan in the old London prize ring rules, though his last fading battles had been put up under the incoming Marquis of Queensberry rules. What ring follower did not know of Pat Glendon, though few were alive who had seen him in his prime, and there were not many more who had seen him at all? Yet his name had come down in the history of the ring, and no sporting writer's lexicon was complete without it. His fame was paradoxical. No man was honored higher, and yet he had never attained championship honors. He had been unfortunate, and had been known as the unlucky fighter. 4 times he all but won the heavyweight championship, and each time he had deserved to win it. There was the time on the barge in San Francisco Bay when, at the moment he had the champion going, he snapped his own forearm. And on the island in the Thames, sloshing about in 6 inches of rising tide, he broke a leg at a similar stage in a winning fight. In Texas, too, there was the never-to-be-forgotten day when the police broke in just as he had his man going, in all certainty. And finally, there was the fight in the Mechanics' Pavilion in San Francisco, when he was secretly jobbed from the first by a gun-fighting bad man of a referee, backed by a small syndicate of bettors. Pat Glendon had had no accidents in that fight, but when he had knocked his man cold, with a right to the jaw and a left to the solar plexus, the referee calmly disqualified him for fouling. Every ringside witness, every sporting expert, and the whole sporting world knew there had been no foul. Yet, like all fighters, Pat Glendon had agreed to abide by the decision of the referee. Pat abided and accepted it as in keeping with the rest of his bad luck. This was Pat Glendon. What bothered Stubener was whether or not Pat had written the letter. He carried it downtown with him. What's become of Pat Glendon? Such was his greeting to all sports that morning. Nobody seemed to know. Some thought he must be dead, but none knew positively. The fight editor of a morning daily looked up the records and was able to state that his death had not been noted. It was from Tim Donovan that he got a clue.
"Sure, and he ain't dead," said Donovan. "How could that be? A man of his make that never boozed or blew himself. He made money, and what's more, he saved it and invested it. Didn't he have 3 saloons at the one time? And wasn't he making slathers of money with them when he sold out? Now that I'm thinking, that was the last time I laid eyes on him, when he sold them out. 'Twas all of 20 years and more ago. His wife had just died. I met him heading for the ferry. 'Where away, old sport?' says I. 'It's me for the woods,' says he. 'I've quit. Goodbye, Tim, me boy.' And I've never seen him from that day to this. Of course he ain't dead." "You say when his wife died, did he have any children?" Stubener queried. "One, a little baby. He was lugging it in his arms that very day." "Was it a boy?" "How should I be knowing?" It was then that Sam Stubener reached a decision, and that night found him in a Pullman speeding toward the wilds of Northern California. Chapter 2. Stubener was dropped off the Overland at Deer Lick in the early morning, and he kicked his heels for an hour before the one saloon opened its doors. No, the saloon keeper didn't know anything about Pat Glendon, had never heard of him, and if he was in that part of the country, he must be out beyond somewhere. Neither had the one hanger-on ever heard of Pat Glendon.
At the hotel, the same ignorance obtained, and it